Craig,
Yo,
how are you?
there, dog.
I hear that. I hear that. Why? A lot of people are talking about today, bro.
Hearts are heavy.
It's always the head,
Mm,
you know?
I'll just set up my thing properly.
Yeah, let's stir me tea. Because I as you know, Craig, we were planning something different for today, weren't we? You know?
Yes.
But nah, this is what was needed to be had. You know, this is the conversation needed to be had. It really is as simple as that,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. Wait a few more minutes, a few more seconds.
Yeah. Yes, family.
Yeah. God, show everybody the dining room.
Evening, evening. Andy.
I'll get this thing a little more straight. Hi.
Give it one more minute.
I think so.
Matthew. Evening, evening, family. Hello, family. Why? My heart feels heavy, D. Can't lie. I was in two minds of doing this one, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro.
I
But
hear, I hear that.
as we shall continue.
You know, I think it's of benefit.
Mm.
It's of benefit, and the community as a whole, really, because we know where this can go.
Yeah.
You know, we know where this can go.
My sister in arms, Liz.
Yes. So, guys, today I'm joined by Craig, and today we're going to talk about the price of freedom is death, and it's pretty much clear in terms of what's kind of driven this conversation today. After what's happened with George Floyd, and others over the years. But before we even get into that, I think what we need to do is to pay homage and really have a moment of silence, you know, and pay respect. So, starting from now, we're going to have a moment's silence. So, yes, as we pay homage to our ancestors who are no longer here, through to these tragic reasons, I kind of wanted to kick off because I know everybody's kind of felt this one. And with today, I wanted to kick off what it triggered off for me and my experiences of racism. So, 13-year-old me moving up from London, East London, to go and live in Erdington in the 90s. Erdington in the 90s isn't the Erdington that we know of right now. Yeah, I was going to school, and the way I was going to school was tooled up, making sure I had my thing on me because I had feelings of unsafety. Yeah, now if I didn't carry my thing, yeah, somebody else was carrying their thing, and this was in the act of racism. Them coming, the older lads, as it was, coming to my school, being outside the gates, and causing intimidation. This intimidation really impacted me badly. And I'll tell you what, people might have knocked these guys, yeah, but I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for the blessings of the burger bar back in the 90s coming down and tackling these boys, let me tell you something, I would still be living in fear, yeah. So I'm going to have to pay homage to those guys who came out and backed us when we never had nobody backing us, yeah, because the school never, they allowed it. The police never done nothing. They allowed it. Our parents were powerless, but the man then backed us up. So that hurts. That brought me back to the 15-year-old me who was lacking emotional intelligence, is lacking the calm and lacking everything that we've sort of built up over the years. Now that moment of silence for me could either take you in two directions. It can either bring you peace or it can bring you to a point of black rage. Yeah. Now, for me, Craig, I don't know what you've been like to live with over the last week, bro. But I tell you something, I've been a nightmare, and I think a lot of the sisters in the room, and when they're living with a black man, we've been struggling, yeah. And this is what it's down to. It's that trauma. Craig, I'm gonna let you speak, bro.
It's a weird one for me, because normally when I have these conversations, I'm very clear about my emotions, and I try not to do things whilst I'm feeling emotive. But the last few days, it's been weird because I was speaking to a good friend and colleague of mine, Leanne, and I was saying that at the minute I just feel like I don't want to talk, because I'm not sure where my anger is going to take me. So it's better that I remain silent. But it's interesting because I was looking at, our elder and teacher, Dr. Martin Glyn's book, and he talks about silences and the fact that when we are faced by forms of oppression, we're often forced to remain silent. And that silence links to the rage in which many of us feel about the impression that we're, I guess, having to deal with. So I'll take it back to when we seen the brother get murdered by that white police officer. And I remember crying to myself, thinking, it reminded me of the Eric Garner situation, the whole concept of I can't breathe. And I remember watching it again, and I try not to watch things over and over again because I'm very also clear about the trauma that we internalize when we see the pain from our brothers and sisters, no matter where they are across the globe. And I remember crying to myself, thinking, you know what? This ain't right. And I'm not suggesting that it's ever been right, but this particular one bothered me. And I think the reason why it bothered a lot of people is two reasons. Number one, we're in the middle of the lockdown. Those that have been adhering to the social distancing rules and whatnot, where we've been at home, there's been fatigue, there's been stress, there's been anxiety, uncertainty around finances, where people are going to work. And then what social media does is it has no filter no more. And whilst the social media enables us to see things in real time, those two things coming together has made us really internalize as a people what's truly going on with our people across the West. So whilst that is taking place and you now start seeing people in many different forms showing forms of anger, another thing bothered me, that I started to get a number of calls from our brothers and sisters that work within the system and want to have conversations with, people from city council or the police, and I just think to myself, why are we talking? We've done talking. I was saying this to Tesla the other day, I remember, being on one of the first stop and search scrutiny panels, and we were talking then. And it seems like people are now awake to the reality of the fact that racism is at the root of Western civilization. And whilst racism is at the root of our civilization, people are now starting to understand the system and the structure of racism and how that impacts human beings in different ways, in different forms. Now, for many of us in the room that are educated, we know that we follow the teachings of Marcus Garvey, Frederick Douglass, Franz Fanon, Malcolm X, and we can do the chain. And then we look at our master teacher, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, that spoke about her teaching and her learning from individuals like Neely Fuller. And what they said from the offset was, racism is a system, and that system operates consciously or subconsciously in all forms of human activity, whether that be entertainment, education, health, religion, politics, governance, war. And yet still we have this conversation about what racism is. And I think that's part of our problem, because whilst we understand the structure of racism, we are trying to find out and ascertain what that means in terms of reality. So I'll just break it down very simple. So when we're talking about that particular system of racism, white supremacy, that's not suggesting that all people are racist, but that structure and that system that we're talking about is designed for one particular purpose, to keep one group superior and the other group inferior. And whilst that group remains to be superior, they enable their systems and structures their thoughts and their attitudes to uphold that particular system that ensures people that look like me and you remain the same in one particular place. So if that functions in the educational system, whether that functions in healthcare systems, whether that functions in politics, in all of those different forms, it's designed to keep us in one particular place. So we know from our ancestors, those that came before us, have fought against this particular system, not starting at the civil rights movement, starting before the plantation, before the Middle Passage, where we fought the part of Black history that we don't often talk about, the number of revolts that we had when Europeans came to our lands to take us, to rob us of our knowledge of self, rob us of our culture, our religion, our ways, our language, of who we are, a total knowledge of self, to give us a fake creation of a human being that we adapt and now call culture. And in that same system, we've always seemed to fight. We know the civil rights movement, and we can look at the Deacons of Defense. We can look at Martin Luther King. We can look at Malcolm X. We can look at the Panthers. And we see a line of individuals that have come from our loins that have never sat down. But the key thing that I want to talk about today, and I think we need to establish in a conversation, is the statement of today's discussion: the price of freedom is death. And from the Middle Passage, from before the Middle Passage during the Arab slave trade, we as a people have always acknowledged that if we want our freedom, we're going to have to give our lives to get this. Our people have, women threw themselves over the boat because they recognize that oppression is worse than slaughter. I'll say it again. They recognize that oppression was worse than slaughter. So they would rather throw themselves and their families across the ocean because they was not prepared to go through what many of our people had to go through when we come over to these particular lands. And that same system that I'm talking about, that system of white supremacy, has been upheld. So when we talk about the concept of white privilege suggests that that system, whether they want to consciously acknowledge that that system is there, they benefit from that system, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not. So now we're in a place now where I believe it's a tipping point. And we're at a tipping point because now people are recognizing that we're done asking questions, we're done kneeling, we've gone into the system, we've asked the questions, we've even voted, and yet still there's been no change. So when we talk about this idea about the village and our community, I'm not an advocate of violence, and that's part of the reason why I've remained silent. Because one thing that I understand in uprisings, I'm not going to use the word riots. One thing I understand in any uprising is that there's no rules and anything goes. Because when a hurricane or a tornado or a typhoon touches a land, it doesn't discriminate. So if something gets burned down here or gets burned down over there, it all gets burned down. And that's what I understand. However, we have to be critical about this. And whilst I don't agree with the way in which some of our people and our youth are in their uprising, we need to be organized. And part of that organization is about many of us coming forward that are leaders within our community, that we can help galvanize and organize those to do the right thing. And I don't mean that we stand in the middle of a road far from where those that uphold the system stand or utilize their buildings, stand in the middle of nowhere talking to ourselves. It's about real organization. And when we talk about this idea about revolution, it's about what does that look like, and it has to be organized. Because my understanding of revolution is it has to be organized. It
Yes.
can't be just tomorrow we shouting and we ranting, and then the following day we go back to normal. It doesn't mean that we upload something on Facebook, upload something on our WhatsApp pictures. It also means that it requires action. But I'm also going to be critical as well, because we're going to have people that are on here that understand our plight, that understand our pain. And this is where I'm going to be critical, because it's not about our white counterparts that understand our struggles. It's not about our Asian brothers and sisters and Arab brothers and sisters that understand our plight. We don't need you to walk with us. We need to walk this one ourselves. But what you can do is fight the oppression and the injustice in those systems that many individuals work for and engage with.
Yes, sir.
So I had this conversation with a white friend of mine the other day, and I made it very clear that I understand that you are not like them. That's what I said to him. And I understand that your heart's not like them, but stay inside. And I'll tell you why. Because if you go outside, you look like the enemy. And if people see you as the enemy, they'll be quick to attack you. So stay in your house, use your platform and challenge those. And that's what anti-racism is about.
Yes.
I don't need you to step down now and walk with me in the street. I need you to ride for me when we're not in the street. So this is our fight. So our organizers, our people need to come together, have discussions about what we're going to do for our community. I'm not going to sit and have conversations with the enemy to talk about calming down our youth. And that's why I'm out of service for the next couple of weeks. So don't call my phone for that. I'm about real organization. And we need to come together and start thinking about what that radical change is all about. And the problem is, and I'll be real, we're not afraid, or we are afraid, should I argue. We're afraid to die for our freedom. And that's why I said that the price of freedom is death. How many bullets did our people take? How many marches and protests, men, women, and children went out there for our people and lost their lives? And then we look at the context of racism in Western society, and we look at America, and we say, oh, it's not bad in the UK. But the system of racism exists right here within the UK. We can go through the list of names of individuals in our community that have lost their lives in the hands of white police officers that upheld that same system of white supremacy. And we're just not calling it out. I think we're still asleep. And how I know that we're still asleep for many of us is because Block Party was yesterday in Smethwick. Block Party in London, in Halsden. We're still asleep. And where's all the bad men at? And that's been my biggest issue, because for many of us that are in this platform, we work with the so-called hard to reach. We work with young people that are impacted, involved in some of the worst things in our community. But where they at? How is it that mummy and auntie are on Saha Road protesting, but Unala at the bottom of the road, chilling, eating food on Dudley Road? How does that make sense? But you want to put all your energy into killing one of your own that lives 5 minutes down the road, but now it's time to galvanize and protect our community. You're nowhere to be seen. That don't make no sense to me. That don't make no sense to me. So I've lost enough respect for the man them that are out here, because enough men have got talk when it comes to dealing with their ops. But who are the real ops? Because when I look at those videos, that can be my brother. That can be you, D. That can be me. That can be one of our children. And when I watch these things and I cry because that can be one of us at any moment. So I'm angry right now with the man them. And I'll say that clear, and I'll say it to their faces. No one don't mention nothing about no bad man, no postcode, no repping of no ends, until I see you on the front line protecting people like us, so we can galvanize and do that. And I'm not advocating violence, but what I am saying in context is that mindset and that drive that you have to want to harm one of your own. If you use that energy and channel it in the right direction, that's when we're going to start to see change. And these are the things that we're not having conversations about. These are the things we're not talking about. People talk about the idea about stay woke. What does stay woke mean? Stay woke should mean that you understand that we're victims of a vicious system. And when we understand that we're victims of that vicious system, we need to then start to analyze then what are the traits of the people. And I truly believe, and this is what Dr. Kehinde talks about, is that it's psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that many of us are scared of them. That's why we're not down to ride. I believe many of us are scared of them. That's why we're not prepared to step forward. But that's part of the system. The system was designed to take us and remove us from a knowledge of self that perpetuates self-hate towards each other. So even if the dragon and the demon is whipping you on your back, it don't matter. But my bedroom looks at me wrong up the road. A man looks at me wrong at the traffic lights. I'm going to jump out and I'm going to mash him up. How does that make sense? None of that don't make no sense to me. So when we talk about these issues, we're enraged. Yes. We're angry. I don't want to hear no calm down. I don't want to hear no relax. Because as I said, that can be one of our children. And the reality is, are we ready? Are we ready? 10 days from now, are we ready? What are we doing next? And that's where I'm at.
And you know what? I was looking at this and I was thinking about that generation, the younger generation you're talking about. And Craig, are they too narcissistic to even care? Does that even play a part that they're not looking at the bigger picture? They only see, well, I'm all right. It's not us. Do you know what I mean? It brings together, you know, all sorts of other thoughts. Do you know what I mean? How on this are they?
They're far removed because they're in the same system and that capitalist society that removes them from the things that are important. And this is why we need to understand what the system is.
Yes.
And it's the foundation of it. That's why I keep saying we need to understand what we're dealing with here. We need to understand the system that's based on imperialism, colonialism, and that capitalist mindset distracts us from the things that are important. So what's important is what shop can we lick off now? What's important, what jewels can we get from the shop? What's important, what Jordans can we tee from the shop? That's what's important. And whilst those things are at play, it's a further distraction to stop us from engaging with the individual that created the capitalist society and those that maintain that society anyway. And whilst we're having that mindset and dealing with that particular mindset, it clashes with many of us, because those of us that appear to be conscious, or those of us that seem to understand the reality of what's going on with our people, that's where the clash is. Because we're almost trying to bargain and get our youth, that those that are full of energy and those that are probably are a little bit radical, we're trying to get them into thinking and understanding what the reality is. But the distraction is that it's only happening in America. But was it not long ago they took Kingsley out? Was it not long ago that they took out Mikey Powell? How many people from our community, left, right, and center, that have been harmed, been tasered, been assaulted by the police, those within law enforcement? So because they're not shooting us, they're damn sure strangling us here. And for some reason, we're looking at this thing in an isolated scenario. The whole of the West has been baptized with the disease of racism. And it's a disease which spreads. And it's in the mindset. And as I said again, those that are from the system, or those that reflect the system, benefit whether they want to acknowledge it or not. So I'm going to say it one more time. Those individuals that may share the heart of African people globally, found in the diaspora, that understand and see the plight of our oppression. Challenge that oppression in your spaces.
Yes.
Challenge it. That's what anti-racism is about. I'm done with just, I'm not racist. I'm done with just the narrative of, I'm not racist because I don't project that. Show me how you're not racist, because I have to deal with this every day. So you may not see it from your lens, but maybe the issue that happened with George is that it gives us an opportunity, or gives them an opportunity, to see what we're going through every single day. Because the moment I leave my house, I'm black. The moment I jump in my car, I'm black. The moment I get to work, I'm black. Every conversation that I have, with that's on an online platform in people's face, I'm black. I can't remove that. So when you say things like, I don't see color, when you say things like, everybody should be treated equally, and all these kind of tokenistic terminologies that get thrown around all the time, or all lives matter. It's not all lives that are disproportionately getting murdered. It's not all lives matter that are adversely impacted by the criminal justice system. It's not all lives matter that are 7 to 8 times more likely stopped and searched. It's not all lives matter that are 7 to 10 times more likely to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and so on and so forth. So it's not about who's the flavor of the month and comparing whose life is most important. Right now, we're talking about us. And I'm not interested in talking about no other group. I'm not interested in the concern of anybody else's oppression. I'm only interested in what we're talking about. And the reality is that our hearts recognize oppression. And unfortunately, our people and history, when you look at it from a historical context, anytime that there's been a tipping point of oppression, anarchy is set. And there ain't no rules. There's not no rules. So I can't say what's going to happen tomorrow. I can't say what's going to happen the day after that. But one thing I'm not going to do is jump and be a firefighter unless there's a plan. Unless there's an organized plan. Because we're done talking. We're done asking. I don't want to beg nobody for my freedom. And this is no disrespect that I'm not saying that I don't want to go out there and step there with my people. But I'm not asking people no more for my freedom. Malcolm X said the price of freedom is what? Death. And that's it. The hearts are heavy, bro.
And the head. And the head.
The hearts are heavy, bro.
I heard somebody make mention, is this Black Lives Matter gathering as much momentum or respect as much as the Me Too movement?
What is the Me Too movement? You know what? To be real, I try not to watch the TV too much.
I hear ya.
It adds to my trauma. It adds to my pain. And I hope that everybody's watching this and they really, really feel what many of us are going through right now. Sometimes I feel like I can't talk, man. I only did this for you today, you know, bro.
I know, bro. I know. Thank you. Yeah, and it is us too. It is us lot. Yeah, it is us. Yeah, it is us as a people. But the fact that everything always seems to be diluted down by grouping us with others. Yeah, it's always the same. You know, diluting our issue by including it with theirs. You know, I've seen it. We've seen it all our lives. It's another way of racism. Yeah, it's another way of racism.
What we need to do is just block it out. We just block it out. I'm not concerned about nobody else's issue right now. I'm only interested in my people. Because when everybody wants us to jump on their campaigns, guess what? We as a people ride for them, and we still ride for them. But now it's about us and what we're going through, and our continued oppression that we've been faced throughout the generations. So I'm not interested. I don't know about none of them protests or none of them campaigns, and I'm not interested. And that's not as a disrespect. I just don't care. I'm only concerned with my children right now.
Yes.
So if I'm walking down the road and someone's coming to attack my family, I'm not worried about the man that's at the top of the road. I'm worried about what's going on for me right now. And until our mindset fixates on us and our problem, that's when it's real. And this is why I'm saying that we don't need support on the ground in that sense. What we need is people to utilize their skills, their talents, their platforms of power, and challenge that in their spaces.
And their privilege, bruv. And their privilege. If you've got that privilege and you're in that so-called position, use your positionality to challenge it at the top where you guys sit. That's how you can do it. That's how you should do it. That's challenging racism right there. You know, if you're standing with us, stand with us and defend us when we're not in the room.
And I would just say that for those that are in the group that probably don't understand what we're talking about in context, what we're talking about is black radicalism. And this is something that I think that many of us, for those that don't know, we need to start looking at what black radicalism is. You know, we need to start looking at the philosophies of Malcolm X and what his arguments were. You know, we also need to look at some of Dr. King's later speeches. You know, one of the things I find is really interesting when we talk about Europeans and they talk about Martin Luther King, you got to bear in mind that in their time, these individuals were the most hated people in the Western Hemisphere. So now that they've died, and then now we want to kind of create this new kind of picture. Now we're saying, oh, you know, everyone should just follow, you know, Martin Luther King. But his last speeches, it's important for those that are interested in understanding the line of black radicalism. Look at Dr. King's last speeches when he started engaging with Malcolm X and others, and he recognized that his methodology of going out in a peaceful protest in a particular type of way was making it more hostile for those individuals that hold the system of white supremacy to take us out. That's the things that they don't like to talk about. So what they want to do is give us the I have a dream speech, which was kind of the beginning and the middle of his journey. But yet still, the same people that talk about I have a dream are the same people that took him out.
Yeah. And in today, that will play out as the same people who the police will call on for us to mediate between the community. Do you know what I mean? So it's the way I view it, Craig, honestly.
For those that want to, in the most simple context, more of a contemporary book, you know, many of us know Kehinde, Professor Kehinde Andrews from Birmingham City University. You know, he wrote a book called Back to Black and was kind of looking at this idea about black radicalism in the 21st century. It's a book that everybody should get. You know, it's just something to kind of start off with. And if you want to then start to get into more stuff that's more comprehensive, start looking at the teachings of Malcolm X, start looking at the teachings of Frantz Fanon, start looking at the teachings of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, start looking at the teachings of Marcus Messiah Garvey, and you'll start to really see the idea and the mindset. And what these individuals were ultimately talking about is that it's about self-empowerment, self-development, you know, and that means in context that we need to do for ourselves, that we no longer need to be sitting at the hands of our European counterparts and begging them for something we can do for ourselves. We've got enough talent. So I love when I hear of many of us in our community opening up a business or starting a new company and working with each other. And this is why I love Cypher, and I'll put it on the record, because we've got a hub where we can connect. And this is about galvanizing and demanding what we want, not being told what we should be doing. We need to be stating what we want. because I'm sick and tired, I'm going to say it again. I'm not asking somebody for something that is my natural right. I'm not asking, and whatever that looks like in reality, in order for me to have that and for my children to have that, then I saw it go. And that's just it. And those that understand it, understand it. I don't need to explain it. I don't need to articulate it. It just is what it is.
Craig, how do we go about these conversations with our kids, man? Because, boy, as he says, a lot of people are making reference to how do we address this with our children. Do you know what I mean? Because I've seen, you know, some good books there, yeah. But what sort of, can you recommend anything that can help us, like, get into these conversations with our kids?
I think what we should do is have conversations with those of us in our community. Again, we've got so much talent. You've got people in here that are nursery teachers. We've got people in here that are primary school teachers. Let's use them to help us to articulate. So when we were growing up, I just remember things like Roots. I just remember going like 104 and Beanie Brown just talking about these people are the devil. And I was just like, rah! Like, we need to just think of just more creative ways of having conversations with our children. Right. So it might be making them just watch a small video, not more some of the harshest videos, but getting them to just understand just like different things. There's museums, there's so many places that we can take them to get them to have a conversation about some of the key things. Yes. I mean, I think that the reason why I'm so hard-bodied in certain ways is just because that ruthless way that Beanie Brown and others from 104 and Here for Road taught us. But there are so many different types of ways that we can do that. Because there's two ways that when you get those teachings, it's going to do two things. And if you're not taught how to kind of maintain your emotions, and like you said earlier, you know, being emotional intelligent in a point where you can manage those emotions, you're just going to go out and start attacking people. And these are the things that's happening amongst our youth. They don't know how to deal with their emotion, to deal with their anger. So it just means that they're just attacking any white face that's walking up the road. And these are the things that we need to talk about. So I would say, again, to answer your question, it's about finding creative ways to have conversations with your children. Yes. About these particular issues. And there's levels. Meet your children where they're at. Yeah. I would say every parent should know what level their children are at. And those of them that are more articulate, more sound, more inquisitive, you give them at the level that they are and just build them up from there. But they're going to need to understand injustice. They're going to need to understand oppression. And unfortunately, it's something that we have to do with our children. Because as little and pretty as they are, as they get older, they're going to be 7 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 8 times more likely to be this, and so on and so forth. Because the system is going to remain. Yes. As I said again, the system is designed to keep us in a particular space. And whilst those that represent that system are going to maintain it as much as they can, and they'll do it through policy, they'll do it through law, they'll do it through education, resources, business, economics, politics. They'll do it in whatever shape or form that they take in order to keep us at that particular place. But that's the key. Because the key is it's telling us what we need to be setting up. So if we know that a system is impacting the way that we think and puts us in a particular place, then either we need to topple the system or create a new one. There's no third option. Because the option that we've been taking, and we have to be critical with this, they tell us to vote, and we vote for one group thinking that that group's going to benefit us, and nothing doesn't happen. We've tried so many other ways to do it. So I think now it's about having those conversations, and that's why for me, I think Cypher's book, The Money Making Manual, was probably one of my best books that I've ever read. Very simple, very straightforward, but got us to think about what we need to be doing in today's context. How do we utilize our wealth? How do we utilize the black pound? And how do we connect that to each other that enables us to be in a position where we can use that money as leverage to do certain types of things. And these are the conversations that we need to have. But what people want us to have, and this is some of our brothers and sisters that are not conscious yet, is that they want us to have conversations with the same dragon and monster that's a representative of that same system of white supremacy, to talk to me about the young people and potential tensions that happen in the community. Boy, don't want to hear it. And you see, this is why Dr. Martin Glynn's one of our scholars, you know. I want to tell you why he's a scholar, because he understands the concept of silence. And I hope that everybody that's watching this understands what we're talking about. You see, for every silent pause that we've made, there's something deep within that. This is what the system has brought us to. Silence. And we can't explain what that silence is. And that silence reflects the pain, the hurt, the anguish, the sorrow of many of our freedom fighters that have tried to put us in a better situation. And many of us still don't understand. Met there be block party tomorrow again. See how much of our people end up there.
Yes, like I said before, brethren, you see, if we're organising something to benefit the community, people will not turn up. But if I organise, say, Chocolate City, yeah, or Chocolate City come to town, everybody book them VIP, flipping WhatsApp group popping, everybody's on this thing, you understand me? And that's the truth. We're still stuck in that crazy, I don't know, narcissistic, nihilistic, consumeristic mindset that's destroying us.
I think one of the things moving forward, we need to somehow figure out a way to galvanize our people and have a more of a strategic conversation offline about those two ideals and what they look like in terms of a systematic change or a paradigm shift, or creating a new paradigm for ourselves, of which we need to think about. And there's the other alternative, you know, that, you know, many of us, our people talk about, whilst we're catching hell in the West. Let's just find ways of going back home and investing and building and creating systems in our own lands. You know, we've got enough wealth now. There's many of us in our local community that are building wealth, and I'm out there and I see people in my local community doing their thing. You know, my local area, I have to shout out Kems in here. I think I've seen Ruben. Just local people, man, that are just really, really doing their thing. And just really kind of, you know, recognizing that our community have benefit and have wealth. But I think that this is probably a second discussion that we all need to have outside and offline, because one thing I also understand about our open enemy is that they're also listening to these conversations. And also some of our enemies look like us. Some of our enemies like to smile like us. But just like on that plantation, when many of our freedom fighters seek to topple the plantation and take away the slave master, some of those on the plantation were scared and were happy with being on that plantation. So whilst I understand that we're talking passion and we're talking from the heart and we're talking about black revolution and black radicalism, I also understand that many people love the idea of radicalism but don't want to engage in it, and will sit in line with our enemy and tell them everything that we're talking about in order to put us in that same situation or in a worse situation that we are before. And to be real with you, D, that's all I've got to say, you know, bro. I ain't got nothing else to say tonight. I guess what I've kind of expressed over the last few minutes is very clear. Man know what I'm on. Everybody that knows me knows what I'm on. And that's it, bro. That's it. So I'm sorry that it's not as articulate as everybody. It's not full of asking questions and what we're used to, but I'm just letting people know that this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm at in relation to a lot of men and women across the Western Hemisphere that's catching hell of this open enemy.
Brother Craig, thank you.
No, you're welcome, bro.
And
Everybody, just before you go sleep tonight, man, just grab your kids, man, give them a hug, and I'm out. Family, enough respect for having me on.
Love.
And I'll speak to you all soon. Yeah. All right, cool, family.
All right. Blessed.